And we'll get started. All right, thank you everyone for coming to this week's From the Bench. This week's guest is printmaker, papermaker, book artist, fiber artist, and museum professional, Jerushia Graham. We're really excited to have her here with us today. Jerushia Graham is the museum coordinator for the Robert C. Williams Museum of Papermaking and a working artist. She is an Atlanta-based printmaker, papermaker, book artist, and fiber artist who exhibits both nationally and internationally. Graham is a member of the Book, Print Artist, Scholar of Color Collective, the Movable Book Society, and the North American Hand Papermakers. She served as the first VP of Exhibitions Curatorial for the North American Hand Papermakers from 2020 to 2021, and exhibited as one of 5 artists selected by the Georgia Committee for the National Museum of Women in the Arts exhibit at Mocha, Georgia, entitled Paper Routes, Women to Watch 2020. Several of her paper cuts have traveled the state of Georgia in an exhibition sponsored by the Georgia Museum of Art and Linden House Museum titled Highlighting Contemporary Art in Georgia, Cut and Paste. Graham is interested in creating spaces for socially minded introspection and empathy through her artwork, workshops, and curatorial projects. So with that, thank you, Jerushia, and the stage is yours.
Thank you, Sarah. So as Sarah mentioned, I'm the museum coordinator for the Robert C. Williams Museum of Papermaking. And in my capacity as museum coordinator, I install and deinstall exhibitions, and I'm also the vat woman. So I make all the paper pulp for our workshops. We have 4 permanent exhibit spaces, 2 temporary exhibition spaces, a classroom, and we do 3 to 4 changing exhibitions a year. Our mission is to collect, preserve, increase, and disseminate knowledge about papermaking, past, present, and future. And if you're ever in Atlanta, I hope you'll come see us. We're located on the campus of the Institute of Technology, the Georgia Institute of Technology. So I want to give a little background. Often when you hear people talk, they're jumping into all of their like amazing work, and you don't understand like how they got there. So I was born in South Carolina, and I grew up on military bases. My father's was in the Army, and I did high school and undergrad in Georgia. So I consider myself a Georgia peach. But while I was working on degrees in printmaking and fabric design at the University of Georgia, I also co-founded an artist group. And we put on juried exhibitions and critiqued one another. And I still turn to these folks for feedback. So on the left-hand side, a picture when we were all students, and then on the down on the bottom on the left-hand side was a show we did together in 2018. On the right-hand side is just an article that ran when we were students, in that Confederate flag is one of my textile pieces called Selective Memory. So after undergrad, I apprenticed at the Fabric Workshop and Museum that's located in Philadelphia, where I learned to do large-scale screen printing, and I was the studio assistant on a Leonardo Drew project. So that project, the Leonardo Drew project, is on the left, and on the right is some fabric that I designed and printed while during the apprenticeship. During that apprenticeship, I also met photographer Lonnie Graham. We haven't yet been able to find a connector, but I claim him as family. And through Lonnie, I was able to assist him at the Spoleto Festival in Charleston, South Carolina. And working with him gave me a great insight into how collaborative, community organized art projects come together. So on the left-hand side was one of the pieces that he did for Spoleto with his photography projected on the wall there, but this was done in a plantation house, so you have the history of the place, also informing the imagery and things that you're installing in it. But we also did a garden project with the local elementary school, and you can see um, down on the bottom right side, the garden that the kids put together. And that's Lonnie on the right. So when I finished the apprenticeship, I decided to do grad school at the University of Arts in Philadelphia. And then after, for book arts, printmaking, and then after grad school, I stayed in Philly and worked for a nonprofit arts and social justice organization called Spiral Cube Puppet Theater. And this organization specialized in working with groups to build giant parade style puppets to communicate social issues, whether that was affordable housing or wanting to honor somebody in the neighborhood that they felt needed, they want to honor or remember, or even things like sex education, where we built a dragon and it threw out condoms during the parade. So after Spiral Q, I worked for Spiral Q for a few years and got homesick and moved back down to Atlanta, and had to find some place to work. So luckily I found Atlanta Printmaker Studio, and this is still the studio that I work out of today. And you can see, this is our old space. We're moving into a newer space, but you know, just basic presses and those kinds of things. So I do a lot of prep at home on my kitchen table, and then when I have things together, take them to the studio to print. While working at Atlanta Printmaker Studio, I did a lot of volunteering and eventually became the outreach coordinator for Atlanta Printmaker Studio. And I worked as the outreach coordinator for about 3 years. And then I had the opportunity to do a residency with the Creatives Project. And so the residency provided free studio space for 2 years. And then while we had the studio space, we were expected to also do arts outreach. So my experience with Spiral Q and also with Atlanta Printmaker Studio helped me with being prepared to do that kind of arts outreach. And I worked with a group of teenage boys that are all on the autism spectrum, designing projects that allowed them to do art outreach to their local community. So in the picture on the right, we're out in the park where we had hidden little small art objects all around a walking trail, and people could find the pieces and take them home. So in addition to trying to my own studio practice and the importance of arts outreach, just interacting with a lot of different groups, I was able to have the opportunity to curate an exhibition at the Hudgens Center in Duluth, Georgia. And so this was the exhibition, Personal Politics, Artists as Witness, Memory Keeper, and Social Conscience. And just it's a different experience making work versus thinking about how you can put multiple works together so that they're in conversation with one another, multiple artists together so they're in conversation with one another. In addition to the Hudgens Center, I did a curatorial project for the Zora Neale Hurston Museum in Edenville, Florida. And they do an annual festival to honor the author Zora Neale Hurston every year. I want to point out that this opportunity came to me because Lonnie Graham, the photographer that I had assisted at the Spoleto Festival, introduced me to the women that run the Zora Neale Hurston Museum. And so I chose to invite Lynn Marshall Lindmeyer as the artist to be featured in the exhibition I curated. So influences. Most of my influences were illustrators, and my earliest influences were illustrators. So I love Norman Rockwell, just the power of telling a story in just a single image. You get so much content and in the little details that he provides. Leo and Diane Dillon, there's a husband and wife team of children's book illustrators, and I was really drawn to them because of how they worked with pattern, and because they also was often common for them to illustrate people of color. Ezra Jack Keats, I loved his collage style, and this particular book, The Snowy Day, on the right-hand side, later influenced the paper cuts that I do today. And then Elizabeth Catlett, I love both her prints and her sculpture. I just have the print image here. And then the photo books of Deborah Willis introduced me to a lot of artists that inspired me and got me through undergrad when I was looking for evidence of other Black female artists. So her photography books, through her photography books, I was introduced to the work of Warner Simpson, Renee Cox, Carrie Mae Weems. And I also, because I was going through the fiber program, encountered the works of Joyce J. Scott and Sonia Clark. As far as printmaking goes, I already mentioned Elizabeth Catlett, who was a member of the People's Print Workshop. So all of the Latina printmakers are involved in that group. Just the bold graphic quality of the images, as well as the social commentary spoke to me. And then printmakers like Robert Blackburn, Doc Strash, Claude Clark, Alan Edmonds, Kelly Raven Holton, David Driscoll, Amos Kennedy also influenced me. And I should say that while in Philly, after I had graduated, I did get an opportunity to intern briefly with Curly Raven Holton, who's pictured on the far right with David Driscoll. So Curly's in the black and David Driscoll's in the kind of pinkish shirt there. So that brings you guys to my work. And I've grouped the pieces into books and broadsides, textiles, and paper cuts. I'm going to try and click through fairly quickly, but while giving you some context as well. So with my early prints, you can see my interest in print and textiles, how those things got combined in the presence of the figure and pattern work. And you'll see that this carries throughout my work, even to my most recent paper cuts. And these three pieces were my take on the American flag. So the figures occupied that area where the stars usually lie, and then all the pattern work represented the stripes, the red and white stripes. Some early books, still playing with pattern and figure, and trying to figure out how to create objects where people are invited and encouraged to interact. So with kind of translucent layers, little folded hidden elements. Letterpress here. Again, playing with that interaction. How does the viewer interact with the work? So this particular piece is printed as a flat broadside. You tear off the folding instructions off of the bottom, and you can fold the piece. And the image in the top right corner is what's printed on the back side, what ends up being the inside of the fortune teller. Where the Blue Black Presides. Again, it's a single sheet book. So this folds down, it prints flat and folds up into this structure. Or examples of letterpress. I had the good fortune of getting a scholarship to Aramont and being able to take a letterpress course, and was really excited about learning how to print typing around. Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen is letterpress printed on combat paper. And combat papers work with military veterans. They teach them how to make paper with their old uniforms. And I was in a show at Allegheny College where combat papers did a workshop there, and then the paper that was made was sent out to our other artists, and that was one of the artists that received some of the paper to do something with. Just a sampling of sorted books. Some of them were books that I made for like during demonstrations when I was teaching, and others are structures that I learned while being a student in workshops. Always trying to learn new structures. So for the last couple of years, I've been studying pop-ups and other paper mechanisms, and trying to figure out how to incorporate these structures in my own work. So the book Soar here was my first attempt at applying pop-ups to my artwork, and you know, I was pleased I got the mechanics to work, but I'm still looking at just kind of refine the images here. So it's some paper treated with watercolor, some rust printing, paper that's treated with indigo, that kind of darker circle in the back, and then just colored pencil and cardstock. So in addition to pattern work, I'm also drawn to text. It's very important to my work. And sometimes the text is visible and present, like in Each Stitch Speaks. These are handmade boxes, hand quilted pieces, and then original text panels. And sometimes the text isn't evident, but has greatly influenced the work. So with I dual consciousness, I was inspired by the concepts of dual consciousness as expressed by W.E.B. Du Bois, which basically says that as Black Americans, we have a double consciousness. It's Americans, but also how to navigate and move through spaces as Black people. In Search of Aunt Jemima, here the text becomes the texture So the poem is reprinted multiple times, and this is a poem by Crystal Williams. There's a great video of her reading this poem. And then in the area where the stars would be, you can actually see the poem clearly. Some additional textile works. These three pieces actually were accompanied by 2 poems by Lucille Clifton and excerpt from David Driscoll's Appeal. I particularly love the short poem, Why Some People Be Mad at Me Sometimes. They ask me to remember, but they want me to remember their memories, and I keep on remembering mine. By Lucille Clifton from book of poetry titled Next in 1988. So it's important to me that the text is accessible, or at least with these pieces, accessible for the viewer. And they're usually displayed on just the labels. So it's not big and bold in your face. You can view the flags just as they are, but they do allow you, I feel, some insight into my kind of brain space when creating them. And then there's the most recent, the Declaration series. And these are, I'm still kind of working through exactly what I want this particular series to look like. The first in the series, The Things I Cannot Accept, refers to a quote that's often attributed to Angela Davis. I'm no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things I cannot accept. And you can see that both the text and the stripes from the American flag is now starting to get abstracted. And this one is Survive and Thrive. So survive is overprint to become more of a texture, and then thrive is the bold statement. Wanting to do more than just survive. So these are my paper cuts, and I mentioned to you that the Ezra Jack Keats inspired this paper cut series. I had the good fortune of having a residency with the 40th Street Artists in Residence program in Philadelphia. And during that residency, for some reason, I don't know if I'd gone to the bookstore or something, I saw the snowy day and it kind of made me nostalgic. And I did some little cuts of kids in snowsuits inspired by that book. And I really enjoyed the cutting and collaging process. And so I translated that technique to the series here, the waiting series. So these figures are all in moments, are presented in moments either before or after something's just happened. So you as the viewer, you are kind of waiting to see what's the next thing that's going to happen, and kind of come and jolt these women out of their reverie. The Exodus paper cut series, I was approached by University of Georgia as an alumni to provide some artwork for their student magazine. They would invite artists to do a series. The theme was Exodus, so I chose to focus on refugees. So the cuts are based on actual newspaper, like photographs from newspaper, news stories about refugees. And the concept to me that resonated with me is like, how do you define yourself when you've lost your country, you've lost most of your worldly possessions. You've lost that occupation or job that you may have defined yourself as, and you're carrying everything that you own in your hands. Can you hear the music? Just trying to create quiet space for the viewer to, have a moment of introspection. Blackbird was cut for an exhibition at the Hartsfield Airport here in Atlanta. The theme was flight, and I didn't want to do an airplane. So I did kind of a bird woman based on the story of the people who could fly. So I mentioned Leo and Diane Dillon in their children's books. And one of the children's books that they illustrated was The People Who Could Fly, which is an old myth that with some of the enslaved Africans that were brought to the United States, some of them had the knowledge of flight. And one day they put their tools down in the fields and flew back to Africa. Death by a Thousand Cuts was actually inspired by a conference that happened at Georgia State. I didn't attend the conference, but I heard the title, and that title just kind of resonated with me. And maybe 2 or 3 years after the conference that I didn't attend, I created these works based on the concept. So the conference was titled Black Liquidity. So the concept is that Blackness, race is fluid, it changes, and it's what it is, and its meaning changes based on the context, where you are, who you're with, time in history, all those kinds of things. And so I kept thinking, Black liquidity, what if Blackness was actually a liquid, physically a liquid mass? So you see the figures here interacting with that mass, and you're, at least in that first cut that I did, you're unsure whether the figure is engaging, like wanting to kind of go deeper into this, or whether he's trying to extract himself from this mass. And the woman on the right hand side, the mass is kind of oozing, expelling kind of out of her. I looked at images of baptisms, and for the woman on the right hand side, it was actually an image taken during taking of a woman who was grieving during Katrina. I obviously changed the image some, but that gesture, that pose, the expression on the face, and was the thing that I took from that photograph. Like a Living River, here trying to expand how I'm thinking about cuts. So I'm incorporating some hand stitching. This particular piece is done on handmade paper from cave papers that was indigo dyed, and also stitched the cowrie shell there. So Like a Living River, this piece is just looking at the woman as a vessel for life, bringing a life giver. The Undercurrent series sprung out of the Death by a Thousand Cuts, but this time I wanted to try and make the mass more fluid. So thinking about society as a big body of water that we're all in at the same time. And my movements are affecting, kind of rippling over and touching your life, and what the decisions you make affect my life. But there's groups of people in our society that we're totally unaware of that that really hold up the whole structure. So basically, thinking about those essential workers, or groups that we just don't think about. Like I really didn't think about handicap access to buildings until my grandmother became wheelchair bound, and having to figure out how to navigate spaces that we haven't been to before. Are we going to be able to get her into this building? Even if they said that they're handicap accessible, is it really a welcoming experience? Or are we having to walk halfway around the building to access the ramp and those kinds of things? So these figures can interacting with the mass of water in different ways. Some are more relaxed, some are more vigilant. Sorry. Still more paper cuts, and all these cuts I'm doing by sketching on the back side of sheet of paper, and then cutting from the back using my sketch as my guide. Oftentimes I'll actually sketch on tracing paper first. I like sketching on tracing paper because I can layer multiple sketches to figure out the exact composition that I want. So I may want the hand from one sketch, the head from another sketch, and so on and so forth. And after I draw it on the tracing paper, I'll transfer it using white carbon paper. Most of the time I'm working on black paper. This particular series, I tried to experiment with some color, but you can see that I'm still working with texture and pattern in the figure. And I usually cut two pieces at the same time. Two sheets of paper they're face to face, and I'm cutting them, from the back side of one. And so I end up with two mirrored images. The Kink and Curl of the Universe, try to marry my printmaking with my paper cuts. So I carved a vinyl block that had this kind of curly texture to it. Printed that in multiple layers on Yupo paper, which is more, if you've ever felt, it's more like a plastic. It has kind of a plastic feel. And then did my cuts and mounted them. And I'm realizing that time is running short. So these
It's
are just
okay.
a couple.
I'd love to see it, so keep going.
A couple of recent exhibitions. I had a series of paper cuts at the over and under exhibition at Spalding Nick's Fine Art Gallery, and then at the Callan Wall Fine Arts Center, Freedom Isn't Free combined paper cuts, textiles, and some prints. It was more works across a couple of years at the Freedom Isn't Free exhibition. With the works that showed at Spalding Nick's, Treading Water in the Deep End, kind of continuation from the undercurrents pieces. These particular pieces, my father passed in 2020, and as you guys know, the just been a crazy couple of years with COVID, and I really wasn't feeling the urge to make work, but I had this exhibition that I had scheduled before everything went crazy. And I finally just had to embrace where I was emotionally. And it was basically, I'm putting one foot in front of the other, just trying to keep my head above water. And so you can see that all the figures in this particular series, that water level has risen. And are they going under? Are they coming up? They're just again, trying to survive in that deep end where there's no relief. This was the Freedom Isn't Free, just seeing how the paper cuts interacted with textile work. This is one of the newer textiles. I'm playing with mending stitches. So the last couple of years, there's been several books that have come out on that's mending stitches, and I like the concept of creating pieces with these stitches. They kind of represent healing to me. And then the most recent prints I've made were block prints for the American Craft Council. They had a craft week here in the Southeast. And again, thinking back to my father's legacy of just being a very loving man and always physically and verbally expressed love. And so even though these are not images of any family members, the gestures, just trying to find gestures that embody that kind of embracing and a joy in the people that you love. And these are small, these are 5 by 7. And that's it. I wanted to just highlight a couple of folks that are giving me inspiration now. So today I'm finding inspiration in the artist, the Rue Collective, and also Black Women of Print. I'm not a member of either one of these groups, but I just really find inspiration in the images that they're putting out in the world. And as mentioned in my bio, I'm a member of the Book Print Artist Scholars of Color Collective. And the collective really creates a space for scholars in book history and print culture, as well as curators to connect with BIPOC paper makers, printmakers, and book artists in order to advance dialogues around the potential of these particular art forms to be used as vehicles for social commentary and change. And we have over 35 members now. It's a fairly new group. And then last but not least, the Robert C. Williams Museum of Papermaking currently has the Guild of Bookworkers exhibition up. And you guys can view this exhibition online at our site, paper.gatech.edu. But we also have the final lecture in our series coming up on Tuesday at 8 p.m. with Dr. Shara Warner, the book, The Future. So if you're able, it's free to tune in, and you can get the link to join the talk on our website, paper.gatech.edu. We also do animation festivals, so stop motion animation with paper, and that happens at the beginning of the year. But this is open to anyone who wants to try their hand at animation. All you need is like a lamp or a clamp light, and there's a free app that you can download on your phone or on your tablet to do stop motion animation. You can do it with cut magazines or do your own cuts or fold up origami and move things around. It's a lot of fun. Again, you can get more information at paper.gatech.edu. And that's it. I always like to leave folks with resources. So my list of resources here for pop-ups, printmaking, bookbinding, and paper making.
Thank you. Thanks, Jerusha. That was really amazing. Your work is really powerful on a standalone basis, but to hear you talk about it was really special and inspiring. I love the ambiguity in so many of your pieces, just to hear you talk about that. Are they swimming? Are they drowning? Are they coming up? Are they going down? It's just,
Yeah, well, I think every piece that you put out into the world is not completed until the viewer brings a little something of their interpretation to the work.
well, thank you again. Thanks for taking the time. Thank you everyone for joining us. And